Right. Very good morning. Now, today we are going to discuss about liberalism. Mm, I think now you can see it, right? Our slides. Right. Liberalism. Uh, some of you, I think, know about liberalism because you studied these lessons when you are in advanced level in your school. But sometimes some of you may not aware about liberalism. So, however, we are going to discuss liberalism with broader perspective, and we are going to uh, talk about that topic in paying deeper attention, right? Because now we are in the university. As the students, we should have very broader perspective and deeper analytical skill to have those objectives, to achieve these objectives. We want to go uh, very broader. We want to have a very broader discussion, right? So this is our content in our discussion about liberalism. We are going to talk about origin and development of the term and the liberalism as an ideology. Then there are central themes in liberalism. So we are going to discuss about central themes. Then there is a relationship between liberalism and democracy. When we are talking about liberalism, automatically other term is combined with liberalism. Other term is democracy. When we are talking about liberalism, most of the time we are talking about democratic liberalism or liberal democracy, right? Likewise, we are going to discuss liberalism in our day-to-day life, liberalism in our age, how it is being practicing, then what are the challenges, what are the new theories, what are the uh, new movements aligned with liberalist ideology. So all these things are the matters or content of our discussion, right? Now, when we are talking about these things, if you have any questions, comments or clarifications, you can ask any moment. It doesn't matter, right? However, after our discussion, you will be allowed 30 minutes time to raise your questions. Apart from that, in addition to that, anytime you can talk, you can ask questions, clarifications, or you can give your comments, right? So, because questioning is the one way to get more understanding. So that is very important part of our discussion and our class, right? Other thing is that we are going to discuss, we are going to talk these things from simple thing to deeper facts, because we want to start our discussion where we are in now, what we are uh, having now, right? It means what we know about liberalism, we want to start from that point. Then step by step, gradually, we want to continue our discussion to the deeper end. So that's the way of we are discussing these things, right? Likewise in our previous classes. So then you can see the slide, right? Most of time, the term liberal, we can see it as a common term in our day-to-day life, especially in day-to-day politics, day-to-day media presentations. We can see, we can hear this term, liberal or liberalism, or liberal countries, liberal Democrats, liberal person, liberal leaders, and so on, right, etc., etc. So then we are going to understand, we are going to know about literary meaning of this term, right? English term liberal is derived from the Latin term liber, 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 right? It is not English, it is Latin. You know what is Latin. So derived means the English term liberal developed from the Latin term liber. So in here, by understanding what does it mean in Latin, we can understand the original meaning of the liberalism or liberal, right? Likewise, at that time in ancient period in Latin, the term liber was used to identify a class of freemen, a class of freemen, right? So in here, in our context, it is sometimes, it may be difficult to identify this idea about the class of freemen, because today all of us are free, right? We are considered as freemen. We can think independently, we can talk independently, we can walk independently, we can work independently, we can write independently, right? Whatever the things we want to do in our context, we can do it without the limit, without the barriers from the others. But we want to take care of others' freedom, others' rights, right? We cannot violate the others' rights and freedom on the name of our rights, right? For example, if I feel now I want to talk, right? So I can talk, but I do not have any right to blame to the others. Likewise, we can enjoy our freedom today in our world itself, right? Therefore, it is very difficult to, sometimes it may be difficult for us to understand clearly what the exact meaning of a class of freemen, right? But not like today. At that time, ancient time, at the time of Greek, Rome, and feudalistic society, there are specific persons or group of people. We can call them serfs and slaves. Two groups. Serfs. Who are they? Serfs means actually the peasants, the farmers. They are born certain land or land owners. Under the landowner, the serf and his family, wife and children, they have to work, they have to cultivate landowners' land for their lifetime. There's no freedom. Food, shelter, and clothes are given by the landowners to them. Otherwise, they cannot have money to buy them, right? Since from their birth to the death, they were compelled to work for the landowners. That's the way of they had to do, right? That's why they are called serfs. After the father, then his children had to work for the same landowners. Without permission from the landowner, the serfs cannot go to other land, right? The serf has to give permission to the particular serfs to work in others' land. Otherwise, the serfs cannot go out from that particular land. That's why they are called bond laborers or bond peasants, bond farmers, bonded workers, bonded bonded peasants, right? There's a bond, but that's not a natural bond. Before their birth, that bond has been created automatically, right? So then they could not enjoy their freedom, their life. The other group is slaves. You know who are them? In the case of slaves, the Western countries, especially the powerful countries, colonial countries, or very powerful countries in ancient time like Rome, right? When they invade other countries, they captured the persons, men and women and children from those territories who were surrendered to them, which were surrendered to them, right? So then those people become slaves. They are bonded by chains. They cannot walk independently. They cannot go anywhere they wish, according to their wish. They had to work for a long time. Other thing is that slaves owners can sell their slaves, bringing them to slaves market. At that time, there were so many markets. Likewise today, Today we cannot see the slave market, slaves in the market, right? But at that time, likewise, other goods, people as their slaves can be seen in the market. The slave owners can sell them and pricing them, right? So then anyone want to have a slave, they can go to the market, they giving money to the slave owner, he or she can buy a slave, not a person, not a human. Look at the scenario. How was it brutal, right? Such a brutal thing. But at the time, those kind of things were happening. The slave owners can kill slaves anytime. There's no anyone or government to question about that incident. That's the nature of slaves. The slaves were occupied in ships. Sometimes to cutting the gold in Africa, right? They have to do a lot of heavy works without having proper sanitation, freedom. They cannot move according to their wish. That's the life of slaves. So at that time, in Greek and Roman period, the term liber was used to denote a class of free men. It means a men, neither serfs nor slaves. Free men means a person, he's not a serf or slave. He's a free man. Free man. Though the group of people which is consisted of these free men were identified by the term of liber. The term liber used to identify the person or group of persons not in a category of serfs or slaves, right? That's how that term starts. Liber in Latin. Then after liberal, the term, English term liberal derived or developed step by step or gradually, right? So then today we cannot see serfs or slaves. All of us are free men. So in today, what does it mean by the term of liberal? So that's very important question. Today, actually, by the term of liberal, it means openness and open-mindedness, because the term liberal is being used to denote very broader idea, very broader concept today itself, right? Openness, that's very broad concept. Open-mindedness, What's the opposite word of that? Narrow-mindedness, narrow-mindedness. But liberal means open-mindedness, right? It means our mind is not bonded by any other things, right? Maybe cultural things, maybe society things, maybe political things, maybe economical things. We have very broader mind to see, to talk, to work, to write, to express our ideas and views. Right? That's the meaning of liberal today itself. Now you can understand, right? Sometimes while we are in the society, we are putting certain barriers to our mind, right? We cannot think in this way, we cannot write in this way, we cannot work in this way, we cannot have a friend of someone, right? Because they are our enemies, they are not in our ethnic group, they are not in our religious belief, they are not our neighbors, they are not our schoolmates, they are not our area mates, they are not our university mates, right? By thinking in that way, they are not in our caste members, we are upper class, they are lower class, right? So-called upper class and so-called lower class, lower caste, they are not in our class, right? By saying those things or thinking that kind of so narrative things, sometimes we are trying to put certain barriers in our mind, in our there are certain barriers in our thinking pattern. We cannot accept the diversity in our while we are working and sitting on in our society. We can see the pluralist society. There are so many people, they are having diverse thinking pattern, right? They are doing a lot of different things, their aspirations are different, their needs are different, their behaviors are very different from us. But considering all these things, sometimes we are reluctant to accept this kind of diversity. Diversity is a natural one. Our nature given to that diversity, our nature given to diversity to us. So that's the beautifulness of nature and our society. So we should have mentality, we should have capacity, mental capacity to accept this diversity. That's the nature, right? But as I mentioned 2 minutes, 3 minutes ago, while we are in society, we are putting certain barriers, certain limitations to our mind. Then we start to think and work with these barriers, right? If we going to do so, openness and open-mindedness, they are not in our mind. They will chase from us, right? So if we want to think about liberal man or liberal person, we want to have openness and open-mindedness. So that's the meaning of liberal today, right? I think now you can understand The English term liberal started from the Latin term libere. In ancient time, it means a class of free men, neither serfs nor slaves. But today, in our modern world, we cannot see the serfs or slaves. All of us are free men. Therefore, in the modern context, by the term of liberal, we can identify, we can see, we can perceive openness and open-mindedness. That's the today meaning of liberal itself, right? So I think you can have clear idea about this. Now I am going to move next slide. If you have any questions, comments, clarifications, you can raise your voice, right? You can ask questions. So in here, liberalism, I can say there's a mixture of so many ideas, theories, and views, not like man-made ideologies. Actually, this is also man-made, but I mean, there are some ideologies. They are produced by certain scholars, thinkers. For example, communism. Communist ideology is the product of classical communist ideology, is the product of Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, and V.R. Lenin. When we are talking about classical communism, we cannot forget about these classical thinkers, because that was the result of their thinking pattern. Not like communist ideology. Liberalism, we cannot find certain owners of this ideology. Eventually, there are certain scholars like Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, F.A. Hayek, in the modern time, Amartya Sen, right? Likewise, in Adam Smith, David Ricardo, John Maynard Keynes. There are the other prominent scholars in liberalism. There are many, but liberalism developed having certain ideas, theories, and views from those scholars. It cannot be limited in certain one or one, two, three thinkers, right? Not like communist ideology. Liberalism, that's why I said that's a mixture of certain ideas, theories, and views. There are diverse or different views. We can say classical liberalism at the very beginning. So then modern liberalism, then the neoliberalism, right? Then after globalization as a part of liberalism. So eventually, I'm very sure in this COVID-19 situation, the scholars and thinkers, they are writing a lot of articles, doing a lot of research in medical field, engineering field, as well as in social science field, right? As social scientist. In near future, actually, they are producing those kind of things. They will produce a lot of research papers and articles, research articles, rethinking about liberalism at the time of COVID-19, right? One famous scholar in USA, Sijak. He has already published a very prominent book about how to face COVID-19 and then the intellectual things in COVID-19 situation as a political scientist and social critic, right? So likewise, Jack, other scholars, they are working on that. So that's why I had said, I'm very sure in near future, we can have good and new dimension, new perspective of liberalism. Likewise, classical liberalism, modern liberalism, neoliberalism, and so on. Likewise, we can see liberalism after the post COVID-19 situation, right? In that discussion, as scholars, students, you can also contribute. You can think, you can write, you can produce certain research works to the development of that discourse, right? So in practical, liberalism as a political ideology, it firstly developed in UK in 14th century, right? 14th century. In the history of United Kingdom, we can see there were two groups. They are called Whigs and Tory. Whigs and the Tories, right? Two groups. At that time, we cannot see political parties like Liberal political party, Conservative political party, or Labour political party. We cannot see. We only can see two groups, Whigs and Tory, right? Likewise, there was a conflict, actually struggle, not the conflict, the struggle between parliamentarians and the king. There's a two group, parliamentarians and the king. So then Tories, they supported the king to continue his power. The Tories, they supported to the king. But Whigs, they supported to parliamentarians, right? That's the difference between Tories and Whigs. Those groups, they are having liberal ideas, but Whigs are more liberal than the Tories. In 1830s, when 1830s, that liberal group, which is called Whig, they are quite popular in the United Kingdom at that time, right? At 1830s, at the time of 1830s. So then their leader, Gladstone, came into power in United Kingdom as a prime minister in 1868. 1868, he came to power as the prime minister. So then, Whigs have good opportunity to establish, to spread their ideas, their principles to the wider community. That's how liberal principles or liberalism in practical ground is grown up. It is started, actually, firstly planted. It was planted in United Kingdom, right? Then after, gradually, it has been grown up. So that's how liberalism, as a practical sense, practical ground, started from in our political history. So then after, as our previous discussion about what is political ideology, I have mentioned that political ideology is certainly the result of practical, political, sociological, economical, and historical uh, event, right? The ideology is emerged as the result of socio-economic and political, cultural, historical changes. That's what you can see in here. You know about feudalism. After the Roman Empire, feudalist society came into exist in Europe, especially in Europe. When 15th century, the feudalism was started to falling down. There were a number of reasons. New scientists came, then they produced new science, the new equipments were produced by the innovators, like then the usage of money, then after urbanization, industrialization came into exist. Because of this number of reasons, feudalism in Europe was collapsed. Then new era of capitalist society, of capitalism, started to emerge. It emerged gradually. Then industrial revolution, the people, innovators, they produce certain new things, new product. On the base of that, for example, Thomas Alva Edison, he produced a bulb, electric bulb. Likewise, many other innovators, scientists, they produced new equipments, new gadgets, new products. On the base of those things, industrialization of factories to produce certain things, certain goods, certain gadgets. They started to establish factories. Then they produced number of items, series of items. Then they wanted to find out a good marketplace to sell them. Then they wanted to establish good banking system, right? They wanted to have good transportation system. They wanted to have government support for their business, their factories, their industries. That whole process is called by two terms. It is industrial revolution. Because of industrial revolution, the people, those who are having bonded labor shift in the village, they heard about that. There are so many changes in the urban places. There are so many changes uh, in town, in the cities, right? So then those kind of cities actually at that time they started to establish. They were in very starting. I mean, they were very beginning point, right? But they heard about there were a lot of changes in certain places. If we go there, we can earn money, we can work harder. By working harder, we can earn money, we can have free life, independent life. There is no any bond to govern us. So they heard about that. So what they did next, the people actually serves those who were having bonded labor shift in village type lands. They migrate to village to that kind of city area or industrial areas. Then they started to work in those kind of uh, factories or industries. They work harder, but they earn money. Then they can find their uh, girlfriend and boyfriends, wives and husbands, right? Then after what they did, they settled down over there nearby certain factories. Then industrial revolution came into exist. Because of that, the people, those who are having work in villages, they came into industrial places. Then they started to work in those kind of factories and industries. Then after they settled down nearby the factories, because it is easy to travel to the working place, right? Workshop. Then the urbanization started, right? Then they are having money. The banking system established. So gradually, those places become big cities in the world, like Paris, London, New York, Washington, right? Especially uh, in this main European countries. Then the investors, they have marketplace because there are a lot of people surrounding their factories and cities. They have a market to sell their product. Then after they started to find the marketplaces in other areas, other world. That's why they supported their government to have what? Colonial territories in other continents like Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Because of imperialism, then they could have opportunity to sell their product to colonial countries, right? So these things were helped to the development of liberalism, collapse of feudalism in Europe, growth of industrial revolution, then the growth of market or capitalist society, right? That's very interesting story. So, and also that's a very practical scenario, practical things which were happening in that time, right? I think you can understand these things. Then they criticized the big power of the government. They wanted to limited government. They wanted to have a government which is having limited power to safeguard civil liberties, rights, and their businesses. That's why, in that context, many scholars came into exist. They expressed their views in favor of these changes. Then, after English Revolution in 17th century, American Revolution and French Revolution, by those revolutions, a lot of big changes were happening in European context. Those changes helped to the development of liberal and liberalism. For example, before the French Revolution, the great French philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he wrote his famous thesis in social contract in 1762. In that book, he started, "Man are born free, but everywhere he's in chain." Right? By saying that, he wanted to highlight, he wanted to say to the people, dear man, dear woman, you are born free. Why you are in chain? You can have your independency. You can have your freedom, right? Those scholars, those changes help a lot to the development of liberalism. So then, Western Europe, Northern America, they started to follow liberalism. Then other parts of the world like Sri Lanka, India, Philippines, Indonesia, and South Africa, and likewise, those countries, actually, we received liberalism, liberal principles, liberal norms from our colonial powers. Likewise, for example, our first post-independence government or constitution is called Salisbury Constitution. Then after First Republic Constitution in 1972, right? These two constitutions also having certain kind of Western traditions. They followed democratic principles. When they are making their standing orders to govern the council members, they learned a lot of things from the British traditions, how they maintain their standing orders, right? So our first parliament is called Westminster type parliament. So likewise, we have started to follow those kind of things, parliament system. India also, they also formed parliament. They followed certain liberal democratic traditions from the British, right? So we are having liberal ideology and liberal principles, liberal norms and liberal ethics from our colonial masters, colonial countries. Because of colonialism or imperialism, the countries which are in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, they can get liberal influence. Then Eastern Europe, because of, at that time, before 1989, the world countries were polarized in two groups. Liberal countries under leadership of USA and Western countries like French, Belgium, and UK. So then on the other side, Soviet bloc under the leadership of USSR and Eastern European countries. But in 1989, Soviet Republic of Russia, USSR, Union of Soviet Republic of Russia, was collapsed. It was happened number of reasons, but after that incident, the member countries of USSR, they declared their independence. A number of countries have shown their willingness to accept liberal norms and liberal practices. That incident was also helped to the development and establishment of the liberalism or acceptance of the liberalism in worldwide. Right? After seeing that incident, US-based Japanese origin US-based scholar Francis Fukuyama, he wrote an article and later on book in 1989. The book name is End of the History and the Last Man. The End of the History and the Last Man. According to him, the history is based on that conflict, the conflict between Soviet bloc and the liberal countries. But after 1989, the collapse of USSR, they have a certain kind of victory. He understood it as a victory of liberal countries or liberal men. That's why he wrote it under the name of The End of the History and the Last Man. According to his point of view, last man is the liberal man, right? But later on, another US scholar, great scholar, Samuel P. Huntington, he wrote a book. Likewise, Fukuyama, he also published an article first, then the book in 1991. According to his point of view, the world history is not reached its end. It will continue on the base of clash of civilization. There are a number of civilized traditions in the world. They will clash between each other in near future. That's his perception. At that time, when he published his article and book, that thesis was not emphasized much. But when the Al Qaeda attack happened in September 11, 2001, then after the people in the world, they started to talk about clash of civilization, and also the main thesis, which was produced by S.P. Huntington under the name of Clash of Civilization, gained vast attention, right? That's how liberalism developed and liberalism accepted in the world. So nowadays, many countries in the world, so many institutions, organizations, movements, and majority of the people in the world, they are living under the liberal type of governing system. Many of them accepted liberalism as their political ideology. They like to have liberal norms, liberal ethics, liberal principles. They respect liberal principles, right? So now almost 1 hour I'm talking. So now I'm going to stop my talking now. What we talk today, literally, liberalism, the term liberal, developed from the Latin term liber. In liber, it means a class of pre-men. It mean pre-men. It means neither serf or neither slaves. But in today, the term liberal can be applied to denote very broader meaning, like openness and open-mindedness. However, in practically as a political ideology, liberalism firstly started in UK in 14th century as as the views and practices of Whigs in UK. When 1830s, they have wide acceptance in UK. 1868, their leader, intellectual Gladstone, came into power in UK as a prime minister. Then after the people, those who are in United Kingdom, they have broad opportunity to know about liberalism. Apart from that, collapse of or breaking down of the feudalist system in Europe, then the growth of industrialization or industrial revolution, growth of pre-market and market economy, market society, the French Revolution, American Revolution, English Revolution. Those things were helped to develop certain kind of liberal principles, liberal things. So liberalism, I have said that it's a mixture. It means the views, ideas, and theories of number of scholars help to shape of the liberalism as an ideology. Then Western Europe, Northern America, firstly they accepted liberalism as their political ideology. Then after colonial powers, they brought liberal principles, ethics and norms to their colonial territories in Asia, Africa and Latin America. Therefore, the people, those who are in Asia, Africa and Latin America, they got the chance or they got the opportunity or they were influenced by the colonial powers to have liberal type of political patterns, right? Then because of collapse of the USSR in 1989, then Eastern Bloc, Eastern socialist countries, some of them started to follow liberal traditions. They started to acceptance of liberalism as their political ideology. That's how liberal political ideology started and growth and accepted in the modern context. In these days, vast number of institutions, many people in the world, they are having acceptance of liberalism because they would like to have liberal ideas, ethics, norms, and principles. That's why the scholars like Francis Fukuyama saying the end of the history and the last man. But there are counter arguments like S.P. Huntington. According to him, there's a class of civilization. But as I mentioned in my previous classes, ideologies are always not coming from the vacuum or from the sky like rain. They are the result of socio-economic background of the practical political systems, practical politics, right? Likewise, we can see classical liberalism, then after modern liberalism, neoliberalism, globalization as a part of liberalism, right? Free trade and industrial trade, international trade as a part of liberalism. But today, due to COVID-19 pandemic situation, right? I'm very sure there are a number of scholars like Sijak and others. They're working on this issue. They will talk about, they will write about post liberalism in the post COVID-19 context, right? Likewise, I'm very sure we can see new version of liberalism. I think it is coming soon. Almost American scholar Sijek published a very prominent book about COVID-19, and he's talking about this kind of things. Actually, he's not a liberal political thinker, but his ideas are very much liberal, right? So likewise, we can see new version of liberalism in coming future. So now I'm going to, I am talking almost 1 hour. Now I'm going to stop. So next day we can have central themes of, we can discuss central themes of liberalism. So now this is time for you. If you have any questions, comments and arguments, clarifications, you can ask, right? Thank you very much for your participation. Now this is your time. Any questions?
Sir,
Yes, Sankalpani.
what is the meaning of feudalism?
Okay. Feudalism means actually it was happened like this, right? You know, firstly we can see a Greek period, right? Like Sparta, Athens. Then after, at that time, I mean, in the Greek period, you know, there are city-states. There are states, but there are there were very smallest states, like cities. That's why they're called city-states, right? Likewise, the Rome was there at that time. It was there at the city-state, but not like other city-states. What the Rome did, they started to capture other areas, other city-states, right? By the time Rome became a very big country, then it's called Roman Emperor, right? Roman Emperor was there, like Julius Caesar and Augustus Caesar and others. They build up very big estate, but they continuously expand their territories by capturing other areas. But at that time, the technology, road development, communication, that was not much developed, right? So then what they had to do, the Roman emperor, he has to give certain powers to local elites. For example, local military leaders or local elites who support to the king. The king allocated certain powers and certain areas to govern them, right? Then later on, when the weaker king came into power, what the local elites did, they started to govern their areas, their assigned areas, in accordance with their choice. The people, those who are in local or territories, I mean distance areas, they are not they are not aware about the emperor, because he he was the Rome, right? The people cannot go there and cannot see him. Uh, only the person they can see, he is the local king, right? You can see at the time of Jesus, uh, he was sent to the cross by the Pilate, right? At that time, Pilate means a local king, not the central king at that country, right? Likewise, local kings were very powerful at that time. The emperor was there at the middle, but later on Roman emperor, uh, later on Roman period, he was not that much of powerful king. But after the Jesus, then the Roman emperor Constantine, he accepted Christianism as the state religion. Then after Christianism and that kind of religious tradition came into exist throughout the Roman territory. So then, the Pope, he has power. He after the Jesus, he is the main powerful religious leader according to Christianism, right? Christian and Roman Catholic tradition. So then the local elites, they started to govern their territories on the name of religion and on the name of Pope, but they enjoyed lot of freedom and power. They were the powerful person in that area, right? On the name of religion, they did not allow new innovations, new things. They wanted to control everything. Because of that, at that time, new thinkers, new scientists, innovators, they were in very trouble, because the political, socio-economic, and religious background were not suitable for them at that time. You know the story of Galileo Galilei, no? Once he said certain his beliefs, then the local elites, local kings compelled him, forced him to accept, to declare those scientific views as a wrong things. Then Galileo Galilei, what he did, he accepted the ideas. Then he said that my scientific thinkings, scientific words are not truth, right? Then after he got his releasement, and then he chased away from the king, local king. Then after he expressed that, when I was in the custody, I tell the lies, right? Because of their force, otherwise they will kill me. So my previous thinking, my previous words are the truth. They are very scientific, right? Likewise, scientist people cannot express their views freely. They cannot write freely. They cannot draw pictures freely. They cannot write freely. They cannot work freely. Other thing is that sometimes uh, religious matters are centered on the church. Sometimes they were misinterpreted. That's why new traditions under the leadership of Martin Luther King and John Calvin, they started new versions, new way of thinking in terms of religion, right? So that that society is called feudalistic society, feudalistic regime, feudalistic era, and also dark era in Europe, because new thinking, new way of thinking, new way of producing some things were totally banned at that time. The persons or group of persons, if they were trying to do certain things, uh, they were blamed or sometimes they were killed. You know, the person who produced the bicycle, then the people uh, identified him as the uh, man who came from the devil. So what they did, they burned him. They killed him by burning. The first person who innovated the bicycle, right? So that type of system, that type of society, that type of mentality, that type of behavior, that type of socio-economic, political and cultural background was there at the time of feudalistic society. Feudalistic society came into exist after the Roman imperial era, right? But there was a king, but the king was not considered by the local kings and elites. They continued their own rule in accordance with their own choice. That's the meaning of uh, feudalistic society or feudalism. But when the new scientists, however, they they tolerating the so many limitations, barriers, difficulties, and threats coming from the outside, they started to think, right? They started to think. That's why they produce new things, new scientific innovations. Uh, that's why feudalistic society, feudalism, was collapsed because of those productions or innovations. New investors came into exist. They started to produce series of items like bulbs, right? There are so many things. Printed machine, then there are then the train engines, and so many things, right? Uh, that's how feudalistic society goes down, and the new era or liberal or capitalistic era, capitalism, came into exist. Then liberalism emerged to help to justify the uh, capitalist era. So that's how it was happened. Is it clear, Sankalpani?
Yes, sir. Now it is clear.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's very good question. You can ask many questions. Anything you want to know? What about the others? Sandakumar, Darshi,
Sir,
any questions?
sir, we could understand, sir. No, sir.
What? Anything you want to know?
No, sir, I could understand.
Okay. Then Vinodani,
Sir?
anything?
No, sir. I
Where
can.
are you coming from?
Bhagavantala.
Okay. Anything do you want to know? Any comments? Any clarification?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you very much so for your kind participation and asking very interesting questions. Right. Likewise, in coming Friday we will have class. Right. Please inform your friends. If you have any questions, please ask. Then I have assigned a task for you. That's not assignment, but that's a task. You have to create picture presentation watching our videos and in accordance with your understanding about our previous classes about what is political ideology. You can make a 10 to 15 slides based presentation, and then after you have to send it to me, right? Then I can understand what you learned from my previous discussions, right? Okay, thank you very much for everyone. Now we are going to leave, right? Is it okay for you?
Okay, sir.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much,
sir.
sir.
Right. Thank you. Bye.